This is the mid-sagittal section of the head and neck, and we're going to go through and point out the parts of the digestive system. So beginning with the oral cavity here, you can see the tongue below and portions of the palate above. So we are in the oral cavity. Just behind the oral cavity is the oropharynx. That is the region between here and here. In that area you can see the palatine tonsil. Below that you have the laryngopharynx. So that is a shared area of air and food. So the air would travel into the larynx next, but the food is diverted towards the back and it continues down the esophagus this way. So the food begins in the oral cavity and travels to the oropharynx next, then the laryngopharynx, and then the esophagus. Next, we're going to go over the accessory structures of the mouth. So you have the teeth and the tongue and the salivary glands. So you have 3 salivary glands and they are all paired, so right and left. So the first one that we can see from this view is the sublingual salivary gland. So it's located directly underneath the tongue. So here's your tongue, and this is a sublingual salivary gland. You can see the salivary ducts as well. Okay, the next one that you can see are the submandibular salivary glands. So located below the mandible. So here's a portion of the mandible, and on both sides you can see the submandibular salivary glands, right and left. Okay. Next, if you turn the head over, you can see the cheek dissected open, and the parotid salivary gland is exposed here, along with the salivary duct that goes with it. So this would be the right parotid salivary gland and duct. Now we're looking at a torso model that has been sectioned so that you can see the internal structures. So remember that you've got 2 cavities that we can see. So this is the diaphragm. Remember, above the diaphragm you have the thoracic cavity, and below the diaphragm you can see the abdominal cavity. So inside the thoracic cavity, with the heart removed, you can see a portion of the proximal end of the esophagus shown from here down. You can also see where the esophagus runs through the diaphragm, and you can see it coming out the other end. So there's the distal end of the esophagus is shown here, and then you can see the attachment of it to the stomach. So next we're going to go over the regions of the stomach. So at the top of the stomach you have the cardiac sphincter, which allows food to travel into the stomach. So next the food would travel into the cardia, which is that first initial segment of the stomach. Okay, the highest portion of the stomach up here is called the fundus. So the fundus of an organ is always the highest portion of the organ. Okay, next the stomach continues along. You've got 2 curvatures. You have the greater curvature, which is named because it's larger, and then you have the lesser curvature here. And this region of the stomach is referred to as the body. The last portion of the stomach is referred to as the pylorus, which is the smaller end, which ends in a pyloric sphincter. Okay, if we open the stomach, inside you can see the rugae, which are the folds. The rugae allow the stomach to expand and stretch to hold a large meal. So from this view, you can see the cardiac sphincter at the top, which again controls the passage of food entering the stomach, and the pyloric sphincter at the bottom, which is controlling the exit of food out of the stomach. After the food passes through the pylorus, it will exit through the pyloric sphincter. So that is controlling the passage of the food out of the stomach and into the small intestine. So there are 3 different regions of the small intestine. The initial segment of the small intestine is the shortest, and it is called the duodenum or duodenum. You can see it opened here, and it continues along. It has been sectioned open so that you can see the circular folds, which are located on the inside. The circular folds are arranged in a spiral formation, so that way the food is not only being squeezed through the small intestine, but it's being churned and twisted the entire way so that all of it comes in contact with the wall of the small intestine for absorption. So you have the duodenum, jejunum in the middle, and the ileum is the last portion. So as you remove the small intestines, you can see the connection between the ileum and the large intestine. So this last portion here is the ileum, and food travels from the ileum into the cecum through a sphincter. So when you open the cecum, you can see the ileocecal valve on the inside, which is the sphincter. So food would pass from the duodenum to the jejunum, through the ileum, ileocecal valve, into the cecum. So large intestine and cecum mean the same thing. Those words are used interchangeably. Okay, so this initial segment of the colon is called the ascending colon. The matter is being pushed upward, and then it then travels through the transverse and then into the descending colon. There are 2 90-degree turns in the large intestine on each side. This one is called the right colic flexure, also called the hepatic flexure. This 90-degree turn on this end is referred to as the left colic flexure or splenic flexure. The food then travels down the descending into the sigmoid colon, because sigmoid means S-shaped, so it's S-shaped here, and that's sigmoid. From there it travels down into the rectum, through the anal sphincters, and then into the anus. There are some structures that you can see here on the colon. You have this thin strip of muscle that runs the entire length. This is smooth muscle, and it's referred to as the tinea coli. Because it's constricted, it forces the ascending and transverse and descending colon into pouches, which you can see all along here. And these pouches are referred to as the haustra. There is a peritoneal extension also attached to the large intestine, which you can see here. This is referred to as mesocolon. Inside the mesocolon, you can see the mesenteric arteries and veins, which are in that area. Next, we're going to go over the peritoneal extensions. So, remembering from A&P 1, you have serous membranes associated with the organs in your body that move. And so inside the abdominal cavity, we call the serous membrane in there the peritoneum. So there's a visceral peritoneum, which would be the serous membrane attached to the organs. You can see each of these organs inside the abdominal cavity is shiny. So what you're looking at is the visceral peritoneum. There are several areas inside the abdominal cavity where the peritoneum double backs on itself. So you have double layers of membrane, and those are referred to as peritoneal extensions. And you have several in this area that you can see. So the first one, starting at the top, is right here. This is referred to as the falciform ligament. So the falciform ligament is separating the left lobe of the liver from the right. This very large piece that you can see here is called greater omentum. So it's referred to as a fatty sheet. So it's a membrane with some fat and also lymphatic nodules attached to it, and it covers all of your intestines. It is attached at its upper end to the greater curvature of the stomach, and it completely covers the intestines. So in order to see the intestines, on this side, part of it's been removed. Another peritoneal extension that you can see in the body cavity is something called mesocolon. So you have mesentery and you have mesocolon. It's essentially the same membrane, but mesocolon is called mesocolon because it's attached to the colon. So you can see it up here. This is called mesocolon. Mesentery attaches the small intestines to each other. So if we turn this around, you can see mesentery here on the back and some mesocolon here attaching to the colon. Next, we're going to go over the structures of the liver. So there are two lobes of the liver to know. There's the right lobe, which is the larger side, and the left lobe, which is the smaller side. And again, separating the two lobes is that falciform ligament that we looked at a minute ago. Attached to the liver are the parts of the biliary system. So those would be the system of passageways that carry the bile. So first we'll start with the gallbladder. You can see it here. Coming out of the gallbladder is a short passageway called the cystic duct. Coming from each lobe of the liver, you have a hepatic duct. So you can see two of them up here. There's the right one on this side coming from the right lobe, and then the left hepatic duct coming from the left lobe. Where both of the hepatic ducts join up together is referred to as a common hepatic duct. The common hepatic duct and the cystic duct join up together to form the common bile duct. The common bile duct starts here and would travel all the way down and enter the pancreas. Now we're looking at the anterior view of the pancreas, which has been dissected open, and the duodenum, which has been dissected open, and the gallbladder over here. So picking up from where we left off is the common bile duct. So the common bile duct comes down and joins up with the main pancreatic duct. At this area there's an enlargement, and both fluids from the pancreas and from the gallbladder are coming down and joining together in this small area. This enlargement is referred to as the hepatopancreatic ampulla. The fluid then flows through this opening here, which is referred to as a major duodenal papilla. So this is where the pancreatic juice and the bile are coming down and going into the duodenum. So the duodenum, you can see here, has been sectioned open, and it has the circular folds in it. Lastly, we're going to take a look at the colon model. So this is the anterior view of the colon. Starting with the attachment of the ileum, you can see the ileum here. Again, the food would pass through the ileocecal valve into this sac. This is referred to as the cecum. Dangling off the cecum, you can see the appendix. Okay. Food then travels up the ascending colon, transverse, and then descending colon into the sigmoid colon and the rectum. This concludes our overview of the digestive system. Thank you for listening.